Alright, update video. This was originally meant to be just for Patreon, but I did realize that I haven't put up a YouTube video in about 2.5 months. So if you only watch me on YouTube, I'm super sorry. I've only been focusing on Patreon for, I guess, the last 2.5 months. I've kind of just been running tests, doing other things, acquiring new builds, posting about things. And while I have made other videos, I've been waiting to release the next rebuilding, which you're probably wondering, where is the next rebuilding? Well, funny enough, I released a Smackdown vs. Raw 2007 Definitive Edition test. So I did this a year or two ago with the 2006 Definitive Edition, which didn't really contain anything outside of the basics, but it was just to test that everything worked and ran on most people's consoles, machines, PC, whatever. I didn't, however, announce it on YouTube like I did with the 2006 one when it was happening. So basically, that test is going to end in about 4 days' time as of this recording. So if you want to get in on that Smackdown vs. Raw 2007 Definitive Edition test, you've got 4 days. You've got 4 days. So if you do, patreon.com/ScottJay, you can get in on it. But the next Rebuilding Smackdown episode will be next week. So next Friday or Saturday should be that Rebuilding episode. It's all done. It's all filmed. I'm just waiting to get the test done so I knew that everything sort of worked before I put everything I wanted to put in it, then put out an episode of what's in case it was like, no, this thing needs to be totally reworked. So yeah, no, that will go up next week on YouTube like normal. So new Rebuilding, finally, which is great. So yeah, new Rebuilding Smackdown. It's long, so a lot of people that wanted the longer videos, they are back. It goes into a lot of sort of industry news, the new console cycle, the effect the industry had when Japan sort of didn't pick up the new consoles right away, the change in the industry and the video game media as well, how they sort of almost were a one-sided slanted bias to the Xbox 360, which already had the leg up with the sort of cheaper price and year head start on release. Whereas, you know, obviously if you go to Asia and Europe, a big portion of Europe as well, Sony still essentially dominates that marketplace. But it was very weird watching sort of game journalism change. And I try not to go over it too much because I know this is a Rebuilding Smackdown episode, but I did think it was important to sort of note that this may have shaped how not just wrestling games, but a lot of video games turned out the way they did, because rather than sort of influencing, whereas in the previous generations, a lot of people were taking influence from the East and how they made video games and things of that nature, and game design in general. In retrospect, this generation had a hard shift to taking everything from the West instead. And it was a very odd time, especially for someone that was sort of getting out of covering video games and then sort of going into wrestling at that time as well. So it is coming, Rebuilding. We'll see, like, you know, the shift to Xbox 360, what was on PlayStation 2, what was promised for PlayStation 3, some shots of the actual PS3 version that I didn't think existed until like, 2-3 months ago, which is crazy. And like I said, if you want to get in on that PS2 test for Smackdown vs. Raw 2007's Definitive Edition, Patreon, you've got about 4 days. Okay, so next up, let's talk about some videos that are in the pipeline. There are actually about 3 videos I've done that are fully finished, but I was kind of waiting for the next Rebuilding to come out because I know quite a few people on this channel do just want to watch those Rebuildings. Yes, there are a lot more that would like to see me do other stuff with wrestling games and talk about other stuff with wrestling games, so that stuff is coming too. Here's a few things. I basically finished a look back, not a Rebuilding, but a look back at sort of some more modern wrestling games. So the previous generation of consoles, so say PS4, PC, Xbox One era. I didn't want to release that before Rebuilding 2007, as well as I didn't want to do it before 2K22 dropped. I know a couple people that, you know, I know a couple people and I didn't know, I wanted to wait till I knew the game was enjoyed by many and I didn't want it to come across like, I guess I put this video out around the time that game came out, and it sort of be like, that game's a bad game. This has nothing to do with that game. I'm glad tons of people are enjoying it. I got asked on social media several times when it was coming out, are you buying 2K22? And you know, the answer is no, but it has nothing to do with how good a game that is. That is just, you know, I kind of made it quite clear a long time ago that the last game I actually paid money for, I think, was 2K16. And that's because of the Attitude Era, right? So, like, I think 18 I got as a gift, and then that was just my default wrestling game up until about 2 months ago when I was gifted a Steam voucher, and I got 2K19. But I was never gonna, you know, pay for those games just because at this point in time, at my age, I'm in love with the era of wrestling essentially that just captured my heart and soul, and was very much what I wanted to do with my life when I was watching that. You know, I was like, this is it, this is the thing. And then as it slowly moved away from that, you know, it hurt me. I got angry. I shake my head watching some wrestling. And, you know, I have tons of friends that wrestle, and sometimes I need to take a big step back away from that stuff just because I just don't like it. Even though I can acknowledge that it's good for the time, or it is, there are a lot of people that enjoy this, but this is something that was never for me, if that makes sense. So in turn, I can be happy that, you know, a ton of you seem to think 2K22 is a great game, which I think is great. But for me, it's, you know, it's like, okay, so with AEW being there, that means a lot of the legends I want on the roster are not going to be there. So like 2000 Jericho, 2000 Big Show, WCW guys like Sting and Paige and so on and so forth. And then, you know, they seem to sort of be phasing out that sort of legend content year by year. You know, Ukes were big proponents of that, but that's because Ukes started their work with WWE at essentially right in the hot point of the Attitude Era. So like whenever they got to go back with that, that's when you saw how much love and attention was put into that stuff. It was like night and day difference, right? You look at some of those modes when they did like 13, 14, 16, how much better the production on a lot of those things are. And it's because they're clearly, me being someone who lived in the thick of the Attitude Era, absolutely loved it, right? And loved the Monday Night War, loved wrestling till about, you know, 2006 or so. If somebody was like to me, right, you're now going to make games on what WWE is, say from 2009 to now, with no legend content, no historical content, I couldn't do it. You know, I would be like, God, I don't want to do this. It's awful. You know, it's just not for me. And so I can understand that, you know, like, the people at 2K coming in, a lot of them are going to be fresh, younger people working on things that are more contemporary and more modern and more attached to sort of what WWE is now, not what it was 20 years ago. So that set of videos, that sort of look back of that from like the PS4 era of wrestling games to where we are now, I did not want to put that out and it be like sort of a slight to 2K22, because that's not what this is. It was just something that, you know, I'd been thinking about for about a good year, and then I finally got a capture card, as you guys know, and you know, so, and I captured a ton of footage. I actually went through and played a whole bunch of those games and captured tons and tons of footage for it. So yeah, so that will come up soon. Okay, so a few game updates. What are you working on currently? And that answer is Smackdown Just Bring It. Now, a few months ago on Patreon, I showed off Smackdown Just Bring It Definitive Edition version 2. However, since then, I'm now working on version 3. And the reason that is because I'm now saving to get the last build of Just Bring It that I think we need. I have 4 builds currently. And the build that I've just been shown that I'm saving to acquire is has the Taz commentary. And I've now seen it fully functional. So I can now understand why it was cut, and I can now share with you why that was cut. So from what I could see, because Smackdown Just Bring It had a much shorter development time, because obviously they had just put out Smackdown 1, Smackdown 2 in 1 year, and then it was like, right, we need Just Bring It now because PS2 is coming out. And with that, obviously, there was a big drastic change. As we noted in the rebuilding Smackdown Just Bring It video, you know, some of the THQ people didn't actually know what the game was going to be structured like in terms of its story or season, because some people were still saying it would be exactly the same as Smackdown 2. Others were saying it would be entirely different. The roster was a bit up in the air. There was people cut like China, Scotty 2 Hottie, and others, which I had mentioned on Patreon earlier this year, or late last, it was earlier this year. Yes, so all of that, as well as the fact that they had this new feature, which was commentary and interactive announcers, where you can beat them up and you can, put them through tables and whatnot. However, you do any of that stuff, the commentary still continues. So you can go in there and you can beat up Taz or Cole. It doesn't stop the commentary. They're getting beat up. That commentary track is still going. Secondly, and most importantly, and as to why I think it was removed, is in this debug build that I've seen now, when you go backstage, and as you know, there's so many huge backstage areas for SmackDown Just Bring It. When you appear in those parts of the arena, say if you're walking from the ring to backstage, obviously you get a black screen, the game will load up, boot up the next area. Right, so when you're in the next area, yes, you'll have you, the referee, and your opponent, correct? Yes. However, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will also have Cole and Taz standing there announcing. However, as you keep moving, Cole and Taz accidentally move out of the arena, so they move out of the field of play. So they're just in this black void, and then the game starts to go crazy. So like, if you remember the older prototype of Just Bring It I showed off, where sort of The Rock was like on the floor shivering, that happens to you after Cole and Taz move out of a certain viewpoint. It stays fine for quite a while, but if it stretches and stretches and stretches, it locks up completely. So I'm saving to get that, and then once we get that, we will have Just Bring It with the commentary team, which we can beat up, which will be great. And then we'll have everything. We already have the playable Michael Cole, we have all the cut moves, we have the cut title entrances, loads of stuff. So Just Bring It version 3, we'll start previewing of that sometime in April. Version 2 will come out in April, so that to look forward to. I will throw up a video when that build arrives, when I can actually get it. And we'll do a full breakdown and look at all the weird and wonderful things that are there. I'm pretty positive that the only things in that build that are different are maybe a handful of attires are different. So we can sort of gauge as to where they were going and see if there's any like sort of earlier stuff that we don't know about. Or as you know, I've already got the Billy Gunn Armageddon attire, and I've shown a bunch of the other stuff that was already removed or locked away. So yeah. Interesting stuff for Just Bring It. That's what's up next. Another thing I wanted to talk about in this video was, as I mentioned in a Patreon post 2 weeks ago, this summer will be 20 years since I actually worked in the video game industry. So I got my first job 20 years ago, so 2002. But the cool thing about that is we are going to take a look back at the events I actually worked. And I was very lucky last year. As you guys may have seen, I got a bit of a winter haul in terms of dev builds, event builds, things of that nature. And some of those were from the events I worked in the UK in 2002 and in 2003. So there's a lot of other stuff there, like Ninja Turtles, Metal Gear, stuff like that. Zone of the Enders, I think, is there as well. Zone of the Enders Second Runner, I think. Other stuff as well, which is really cool, like Tekken 4 prototype is there, stuff like that, loads of cool stuff. But the big things are obviously Smackdown Shut Your Mouth, WWE Crush Hour, and Smackdown Here Comes the Pain. So we're going to take a deep dive into what was in those builds, what was previewed, and the fact that I actually worked on those kiosks at the time. Which is crazy because I remember playing Smackdown Shut Your Mouth when the show, like an hour before the show started. As I said, I was there early anyway because I was helping I wasn't just helping set up my place, but like I said, my girlfriend was working. My girlfriend at the time was working the motorcycle show, so I was doing stuff with her too. And then I got to play Smackdown Shut Your Mouth sort of an hour earlier, and I was like, wow, couldn't wait. So yeah, this is pretty crazy. We're gonna take a look through those builds, see loads of different things like title screens, entrance movies, of course, characters. When I say entrance movies, I mean for Shut Your Mouth. The way to differentiate different builds of SmackDown Shut Your Mouth is when you start the game, there's that movie, the looping movie, which is on the menu. There is like 3 or 4 different versions of that. This build has a different one. The build after it has a different one. The final release has one. And there's one before that as well, which was used at E3. So that movie, I think obviously Ukes were sort of using the footage they got at the time, and they were taking it away and using more up-to-date footage as the game got closer to release. But I would love to actually have sort of the first version of that movie just to see what they were doing, because I think that gives a clear indicator of what they were trying to do and things that they may have planned, such as the tires and things like that, and then what got scrapped, what got changed, stuff like that. But yeah, we will take a look through the PlayStation Experience WWE side of things. If you guys want me to go through the other more general stuff, so I have builds for the first Ninja Turtles game on a main console in years, which was the 2003 animated series video game. That was demoed and previewed there. So there's that. There's Metal Gear. So a year later, there's Metal Gear. I can't remember. Is it a year later? There's, I think, the document of Metal Gear Solid, things like that. Then also there's Zone of the Enders. I'm trying to think, what else is there? Of course, there's like Tekken, Jak and Daxter 2. There's a whole bunch of stuff. SSX, Tricky. Loads and loads of things that were at that show. That show was amazing. I got my Metal Gear games signed by Hideo Kojima there, and my Zone of the Enders games actually. So yeah, because he was a guest on the Saturday. Yeah, it was the Saturday. Oh gosh, crazy times. They actually held game tournaments too. Let's not talk about it. Let's talk about it in the video. Yeah, so we're gonna be looking back on that stuff. Right. Lastly, let's talk about the episode after rebuilding SmackDown vs. Raw 2007, and that will be WWF Raw for the Microsoft Xbox. So yes, I know it's been a while, but we're finally going to get into covering those. That is the next rebuilding video. I've already done a ton of work on it. I have done for a while, to be honest. I don't know if there'll be like a major release for stuff for WWF Raw, because a lot of it is a lot more sort of, I guess, Photoshop files, image documents, plans, press kits, things like that were big into sort of the lead up as to what it actually came through, development and media interaction with Anchor, and how that played out up to the release of WWF Raw, and sort of not getting clear answers on things. So being like, is there going to be just the Raw arena and no SmackDown or anything else? Nobody thought that this was even possible, but that's what they put out for $55 at the time, which is crazy. And I bought an Xbox for that thing. Joke's on me, I guess. I just wanted to rock bottom and stun at people on the Xbox. So yeah, the next rebuilding and coming will be WWF Raw. But before that, I will see you next week for rebuilding SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. As I said, this was just a tiny quick update video that I'm just throwing on YouTube because I know I haven't shown YouTube any love for like a couple months. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please hit that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you can support me on Patreon, please do at patreon.com/ScottJay. And until next time, take care. Hope you're doing well. Stay safe.